You're standing in the pro shop, a wall of irons in front of you. The price tag on the set you want reads $1,400. Right next to it sits another full set for $400. And here is what I found after months of digging. In most cases, those two sets were forged in the exact same building, by the same hands, on the same machines. I investigated 12 of the biggest golf iron brands on earth. Only 3 are actually worth your money in 2026. And the reason has almost nothing to do with the metal in the head. It started with a simple question I could not shake. Why does one 7-iron cost 3 times more than another when they hit the ball the same distance? I pulled that thread for months, and it led me somewhere I did not expect. The moment that stopped me cold was a shipping manifest I stumbled on for a foundry in Japan called Endo Manufacturing. 4 premium brands, 1 address, 1 loading dock. By the end of this, I will show you a buried piece of research from Karsten Solheim, the man who changed golf forever in 1959, that reveals the single most important thing about an iron. It is not the brand, and you can check it this weekend with the clubs already sitting in your garage. So let me walk you through the case, one clue at a time. Because once you see how this works, you will never look at a golf shop the same way again. Let me start with the thing that broke the whole investigation wide open. I always assumed that if I paid more, I was getting a better built club, more engineering, better steel, a factory that other factories could not match. That belief cost me a lot of money over the years. Here is what I learned. The vast majority of golf iron heads on the market today are not made by the company whose name is stamped on them. They are made by a small handful of foundries, mostly in Japan, Taiwan, and China. The brand designs the shape and pays for the name. The foundry does the hard part. The most respected of these is Endo Manufacturing, founded in 1950. It sits in Niigata, Japan, in a region famous for metalworking that goes back centuries. Endo forges irons for some of the most premium names you can think of. Brands that charge you a serious price and lean hard on the word forged in their advertising. What they rarely tell you is that the forging happened at the same plant that forged a cheaper club sitting 2 shelves over. Then you have the casting side. Companies like Advanced International Multitech and OTA Precision in Taiwan cast iron heads for dozens of brands. Investment casting is a process where molten steel is poured into a ceramic mold. It is precise, repeatable, and cheap at scale. And once that mold is made, the 200th head costs almost nothing more than the second. So I did what any stubborn person would do. I lined up spec sheets from 6 different brands side by side. Same loft, same lie, same length, same steel. Call 430 stainless in most cast irons. The heads were, for all practical purposes, twins wearing different jerseys. Now here is where it got interesting for me. If the heads are that similar, and the steel is that similar, then what exactly am I paying an extra $1,000 for? Because it clearly is not the metal. That question is the reason I could not stop. Because the answer, when I finally found it, was not about manufacturing at all. It was about a trick played with numbers, right on the club itself. And it has been fooling golfers for almost 40 years. So let me show you the second clue, because this is the one that made me angry. I had always believed that new irons go farther than old irons because the technology got better. The ads certainly say so. Every spring there is a new model that promises 10 more yards, 15 more yards, off the tee and off the deck. And every spring millions of people trade in perfectly good clubs to chase those yards. But when I actually measured it, the story fell apart. Here's the trick. It is called loft-jacking, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The loft of a club is the angle of the face. That angle is what controls how far the ball goes. A weaker, more open loft sends the ball higher and shorter. A stronger, more closed loft sends it lower and farther. Simple physics. So let me give you the numbers, because this is where the specificity matters. Back in the 1980s, a standard 7-iron had a loft of about 38 degrees. That was the norm across the industry. Today, a lot of so-called game improvement 7-irons come in at 28, 29, 30 degrees. Do you see what happened there? The modern 7-iron has the loft of an old 5-iron. Of course it goes farther. It is not a better 7-iron. It is a 5-iron with the number 7 printed on the sole. I tested this myself with a launch monitor and 2 sets 30 years apart. The new club hit it about a club and a half longer. Then I checked the lofts. The entire distance gain was explained by the loft difference. Not 1 yard came from magic technology. Not one. And here is the part that really got me. They did not just strengthen the 7-iron. They strengthened the whole set. So your pitching wedge, which used to sit around 50 or 51 degrees, now sits at 43 or 44, which means you now have a gap in your bag where a real wedge used to be. And guess what they sell you to fill that gap? Another wedge. 2 more wedges, actually, called a gap wedge and an approach wedge, sold separately. So the distance you were told you gained came with a hidden cost. You went from needing 1 wedge to needing 3. That is not innovation. That is a sales funnel disguised as progress. Now, to understand how we got here, I had to go back to the man who invented the modern iron head. His name was Karsten Solheim, a Norwegian-born engineer working at General Electric. In 1959, frustrated with his own putting, he built a putter in his garage that made a pinging sound when it struck the ball. He named his company after that sound, Ping. Solheim figured out something nobody in golf had taken seriously. If you move the weight of the club head to the edges, to the perimeter, the club becomes far more forgiving on off-center hits. This is called perimeter weighting, and it is the single most helpful thing that ever happened to the average golfer. He brought it to irons, and by 1982, the Ping I2 irons had become one of the best-selling sets in history. Here is the thing. That breakthrough, perimeter weighting, is over 60 years old. It is in every game improvement iron made today, cheap or expensive. The core technology that actually helps you was invented before most of us finished school, and it has been sitting in the public domain for decades. So the real forgiveness in your irons is not new. It is old, borrowed, and long since paid for, which forced me to ask the next uncomfortable question. If the head is made in a shared foundry, and the helpful technology is 60 years old, and the distance gains are just bent lofts, then where is all that money actually going? Somebody is getting rich off my confusion. I wanted a name. So I followed the money, and this is where the case stops being about clubs and starts being about you. I always assumed the price of a premium iron reflected the cost of making it. It does not. Industry breakdowns of a typical premium iron set show that the raw manufacturing cost of the heads, the shafts, and the grips is a small fraction of what you pay at retail. Once you account for the foundry work, a set that sells for well over $1,000 often costs a modest amount to actually produce. So where does the rest go? A large piece of it goes to one thing: tour sponsorship. The money you hand over at the register helps pay the professionals you watch on television every weekend to keep that brand in their bag. Think about that for a second. A top professional can be paid a fortune each year, sometimes millions, just to play a certain brand of clubs. Multiply that across a whole stable of players, and you are talking about enormous sums. And that money does not fall from the sky. It comes from the markup on the clubs sold to regular players like you and me. Here is the part that stings. The clubs those professionals actually play are frequently not the same clubs you can buy. They are custom ground, hand-selected, tour-issue heads, tuned to specs no retail buyer ever sees. So you are paying a premium to fund the image of a club in order to buy a mass-produced version of a club the sponsored player would never game. And I want to be fair here, because I doubted this myself. I thought, surely there is some real research and development baked into the price. And there is some. But independent testing tells a humbling story. A group called My Golf Spy runs robot testing on irons every year, taking the human swing out of the equation entirely. Year after year, when they line up the game improvement irons from all the big names, the performance differences are tiny. A few yards here, a little more forgiveness there, nothing close to the price gap between them. So the villain, if you want to call it that, is not one evil company. It is a whole system built on a simple bet. The bet is that you will believe newer means better, that a bigger name means a better ball flight, and that you will never think to check the loft or ask where the head was made. That system has quietly taken money out of the pockets of everyday golfers for decades, and most of us thank them for it on the way out the door. But knowing you have been overpaying does not fix your golf game. So let me turn this around, because the next part is the one that actually helps you, and it costs you nothing. And that finally forced me to ask the next uncomfortable question, and honestly, it sent me down a rabbit hole that eventually became something much bigger than this video. While I was deep in this research, I kept running into the same pattern. The most useful information was either buried in old trade documents, hidden in robot testing footnotes, or scattered across decades of equipment history that most golfers would never sit down to read. So I pulled it all together into a series of digital guides, smart basics, deeper fixes, and the full system, each one built around the exact questions this investigation kept raising. If you want the full picture in one place, check the description for details. Every bit of it is designed to be practical, not technical, and built for golfers who are done paying for things that never help them. But back to the investigation, because the next clue is the one that made me the most angry of all. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking this all sounds interesting, but you are not about to become an equipment nerd, and you are not going to spend a weekend measuring loft angles in your garage. You just want to hit the ball better without getting fleeced. So this next part is built specifically for you, and every bit of it uses clubs and resources you already have. Here's the first thing I want you to do this week. Take the irons you already own, the ones you might have been thinking of replacing, to any real golf shop or club fitter and ask 3 questions. What are my current lofts? What is my lie angle? And are they consistent from club to club? Most shops will check this for a small fee, sometimes for free if you are a regular, and the whole thing takes about 20 minutes. Why does this matter so much? Because older irons and even newer ones drift out of spec. The lofts and lies bend slightly over years of use and hitting off mats and hard ground. When your gaps are uneven, you get 2 clubs that go the same distance and a giant hole somewhere else in your bag. Fixing that with a simple bending machine costs a few dollars per club and can do more for your scoring than a whole new set. I did this with my own irons and found 2 of them were nearly identical in loft. No wonder I could never trust the distance. The second thing, before you spend $1 on new irons, get the lie angle checked with something called a lie board and a strip of impact tape on the sole of the club. You hit a few shots off a hard plastic board, and the scuff mark tells you whether the toe or the heel is digging in first. This is the fitting step that matters most, and I will come back to why in a moment because it ties directly into the buried research I promised you. The third thing, and this is the money saver, stop buying this year's model. The single smartest purchase in golf is last year's flagship iron, or the model from 2 years ago. The moment a new set launches, the previous one drops in price, often by 40 to 50%, sometimes more. It is the same foundry, the same 60-year-old perimeter weighting, and a performance difference so small a robot can barely measure it. You are buying a nearly identical club for half price simply because it is no longer on the front wall. And if you want to go one step further, look at the direct-to-consumer brands. These are companies that sell online, skip the retail markup, and often use the very same foundries as the big names. No tour sponsorship tax baked into the price. I will name the specific ones I trust at the end, because they are a big part of the answer to the title question. Here is my promise to you. If you do just those 3 things, check your lofts and lies, fix your gaps, and buy smart instead of new, you will play better golf and spend a fraction of what the wall in that pro shop wanted from you. No expertise required, just the willingness to ask questions the marketing hopes you never ask. But there is one last piece of this case I have been holding back. Because when I finally found it, buried in the history of the man who started all of this, it changed how I think about golf equipment completely. And it answers the real question underneath everything. What actually makes an iron work for you? So let me take you all the way back to Karsten Solheim and Ping, because the most important discovery of my entire investigation came from him, and almost nobody talks about it anymore. Everyone remembers Solheim for perimeter weighting, but that is not his most useful gift to the average golfer. In the 1970s, Solheim became obsessed with a variable that the whole industry treated as an afterthought, lie angle. That is the angle between the shaft and the ground when the club sits at address. Solheim ran the testing himself, striking ball after ball with clubs bent to different lie angles, and what he documented was startling. He found that if the lie angle is wrong for your body and your swing, even by a couple of degrees, the club face points off target at impact no matter how perfectly you swing. A club that is too upright pulls the ball left. A club that is too flat pushes it right. And the effect grows the shorter the club and the more loft it has. Let me put a number on it, because this is the number that changed everything for me. According to the research that came out of that work, a lie angle that is off by just 2 degrees can send your shot roughly 10 to 15 feet offline on a mid-iron from 150 yards out. 2 degrees. You cannot see 2 degrees with your eye. But it is the difference between a green in regulation and a bunker. This is why Ping created something you have probably seen and never understood: the color-coded dot system. Ping irons come with a small colored dot on them, and each color represents a different lie angle, fitted to the golfer through that lie board test I mentioned earlier. Solheim built an entire fitting philosophy around the idea that the club must match the person, not the other way around. He was doing custom fitting for everyday golfers decades before it became fashionable. And here is the buried truth of the whole investigation. The most important thing about your irons is not the brand on the sole. It is not the year. It is not the shared foundry or the bent lofts or the tour player in the television ad. It is whether the lie angle and the length fit your body and your swing. A $300 set fitted correctly to you will beat a $1,400 set off the rack every single time. That is not my opinion. That is Karsten Solheim's own research, sitting in plain sight for 50 years, quietly ignored because there is no profit in telling you the clubs you already own might just need bending. So this weekend, here is what the whole case comes down to. Take any iron you own to a shop with a lie board. Hit 5 balls. Read the scuff mark. If it is toward the toe, your clubs are too flat for you. If it is toward the heel, they are too upright. A few dollars and a few minutes with a bending bar, and that club now points where you are actually aiming. The single greatest improvement in golf, discovered by the founder of Ping half a century ago, and it costs less than a sleeve of premium balls. And that finally answers the title. After investigating all 12 brands, here are the only 3 categories actually worth your money in 2026, and now you will understand exactly why. The first is a genuine value heritage brand, and the one I keep coming back to is Wilson. This is a company that has been making clubs since the early 1900s and has more major championships won with its irons than almost anyone. But because it stopped pouring fortunes into tour sponsorship years ago, its irons sell for a fraction of the flashy names while coming out of the same quality foundries. You are paying for the club, not the commercial. The second is the direct-to-consumer forged brands. Companies like Sub 70 and Tacomo sell forged irons, real forged irons from serious foundries, straight to you online, and they include custom fitting for lie and length as part of the order. No middleman, no retail markup, no tour tax, a forged, fitted set for well under half of what the big wall charges. That is the sweet spot Solheim was pointing at all along. And the third is not a brand at all. It is last year's flagship from any of the major names, bought used or discounted, and then bent to fit you. The technology is identical to this year's, the performance is a rounding error apart, and the price has already collapsed simply because a new box arrived at the store. Buy the club everyone else is dumping, fit it to your body, and you have quietly beaten the entire system. Those are the 3, not because of secret metal or magic distance, but because each one lets you pay for what actually matters and refuse to pay for what never did. So here is what I really walked away with after all these months. It was never about finding the best iron. It was about realizing that the thing they sold hardest, the brand, the year, the yards, was the thing that mattered least. And the thing they never mentioned, a club that simply fits you, was the thing that mattered most. You did not lose your golf game to a lack of talent. You lost it to a story someone profited from you believing. If you are the kind of person who has always suspected that the simplest, oldest, cheapest answer was buried on purpose to protect somebody else's price tag, then you already understand what this whole investigation was really about. You were right to be suspicious. You were right all along. Now I want to hear from you. Go look at your own 7-iron and tell me its loft. If it is 29 or 30 degrees, You are holding a 5-iron with the wrong number on it, and I want you to type that number in the comments so we can see just how far this trick has spread. Drop it below, I read them. And if you want to keep pulling threads like this one, come with me. This channel is a small group of people quietly recovering the practical knowledge that got buried under marketing, one investigation at a time. Because the next case I am chasing is even stranger. I found evidence that the golf ball you play, not the club, may be costing you more strokes than anything else in your bag, and that the ball companies have been running the exact same distance trick since the 1960s. That one is going to make some people uncomfortable. Stick around, ask the questions they hope you never ask, and I will see you on the next one. I'm still with you. You made it all the way here. Inside the old ways circle, I pick up right where I just stopped and take you deeper. In there, you can ask me your own question, and a real person me answers you myself. And you're not alone. Folks like you are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime, no risk.